What's the significance of Waymo getting this permit first, Eric?
You know, Waymo has always insisted that they wanted to build the technology that didn't require the driver, so that they would be the first company to sort of get a permit to do that is fitting because that's always been their conviction. It's made them sort of go really slowly. They've been reluctant to have these pilot programs with a driver in the front seat. And so now we're going to see if their sort of theory of the world that you need a fully autonomous vehicle that can work without a driver is going to pay off.
I was actually one of the very first journalists to get in a Google self-driving car. That was in 2011.
Exactly.
And it's been years.
Right.
It's been years. So Ryan, talk to us about the importance of having federal legislation here.
Well, one thing that's important to understand right now is that there's nothing in federal law that actually prohibits a company from fielding a fully autonomous vehicle. Where the legislation that's being debated right now in the Senate is important is that it would allow companies to field a lot more cars that are exempt from federal safety standards that require things like a steering wheel, like foot pedals. So if Waymo is really going to go all of the way towards its vision of having a truly driverless car that doesn't need normal driver-focused elements of vehicle design and could deploy it at scale, they'll need these exemptions. And that's one of the big reasons that companies have been backing this legislation.
Eric, Sebastian Thrun, founder of the self-driving car, ran Google X for a long time. He's told me he's driven to Tahoe with his family, with his kid in the car, in the self-driving car, and yet there are still these questions. Are they safe? Can it be done? There are articles all the time about the mistakes that these cars are making. Talk to us about the challenges.
I mean, fundamentally, the problem with self-driving car is how do you know what you can't solve? You know, there are all these edge cases, as the tech people like to talk about.
Every day there are edge cases.
The problems that they know they can't solve yet, but they hope to solve soon. And I think the industry has been very bad at predicting just how long that would take. And now that those problems still continue to exist, it's hard for anyone to give assurances that sort of everything will be solved. So I think there is a lot of cynicism just waiting to sort of hammer out what do you do if someone's waving a car on but you have a fully autonomous vehicle.
Ryan, certain states have had, more issues than others. There have been accidents. There have been deaths with some of these experiments. How does what we're seeing at the federal level differ from what the states are doing when it comes to legislating?
Well, I think you bring up a really important thing, and that is the accidents that we've seen earlier this year in Arizona involving Uber, in California involving Tesla, those two fatalities. Just recently in D.C., you're starting to see some signs that's starting to have an impact, and it's starting to sort of affect the way federal regulators are viewing this technology. You're starting to see some signs that even the Trump administration is starting to look at this new technology with a little bit more skepticism. It's also emboldening and giving some ammunition to safety advocates who are basically saying that, look, there's this artificial rush to pass legislation at the federal level. It doesn't need to go this fast. We need to take our time.
So on that note, Eric, Bill Gurley, who was on the board of Uber for a very long time, has said, look, self-driving cars are going to take 20 or 30 years. And it was one of the things that he disagreed with Travis Kalanick, the former CEO, about. And Travis really wanted to forge ahead with self-driving technology. Dara Khosrowshahi has sort of continued that, but the strategy has changed.
Well, I think one of the most fascinating questions as Uber prepares for the IPO is going to be whether the company tries to set up a separate vehicle for self-driving cars so that, if you're a self-driving bull, you can invest in that. And if you're a self-driving bear, you can have exposure to Uber without sort of worrying about self-driving cars.
Because it's also incredibly costly.
It's super expensive. I'm sure when they file, we're going to see huge research and development costs that they're going to attribute to self-driving cars. So, Dara Khosrowshahi is going to have to sort of decide with his CFO, do we think we could be more valuable with this as part of the company or with this as sort of majority owned by the company with outside investors?
What has he signaled on this thus far? I mean, because he also seems fully behind these flying taxis.
We had on the that we're not going to go down. But on the record, he said, they get sort of a lot of pitches from bankers. They're considering sort of a lot of different things. So I think he's shown sort of an openness to sort of maximize whatever makes the most financial sense for Uber, but he hasn't really shown his hand on whether they really would spin it out or get some sort of big outside investor or anything like that.